questions. So very fitting that we'll talk to you. We are old, I guess the slide says. We have some great partnerships. We've been doing this for a few years now, as the last slide said, but been working with NVIDIA and with KPMG around trusted AI solutions. We have what we call an Agentic AI supervisor that sits on top of systems, mostly Agentic AI systems, and it can monitor and try to keep them safe. And I'll talk a little bit about the research that we're doing. We have a technical white paper. We have a second one coming out. You can go onto our website, download those. I have a QR code at the end. We do very well against independent evals where they exist, but a lot of evals don't exist in this space. And some of you are in this space, and that's you're here. There's lots of different ways of thinking about AI and security. We're specifically talking about AI systems and how to make them secure and more resilient and more trustable. And just as AI sort of gets stronger and you start to move from simple chatbots that you're just conversing with text to actual things that are doing things, right? So agentic AI means agency. It's doing things. It's either involved in a workflow or tools, and it's actually reading or writing from your systems. And it may have increased autonomy and planning, right? All of these things we'll talk about, but all of that means, with more power, there's more that can go wrong, right? So we started to look at this from almost an academic perspective, and we went through the various agentic frameworks that are common, the most common open source frameworks. There's different levels of autonomy, and we'll try to classify them. There's different classification systems. They are somewhat academic, so I won't go through them. A lot of them are not actually relevant when you think about actually where are the security risks or where are the concerns around safety. But if you try to take an agentic system, broadly speaking, it has a goal, it will have a plan that might be given by you, right? The goal is hopefully given by you. It's hopefully not goalless and coming up with its own goals, but then it has a plan, may or may not be given by you, depending on how constrained you create it. It has an actor, one or more agents that are working through this. They are using potentially tools or calling other agents. And then there might be a replanning or some assessment of results that come back, and it works through its way. And that can be as complicated or as simple as you make it. These systems are getting more and more complex, where they are actually starting to plan or modify the plans, right? And so then you have to think, is that plan safe? Is it aligned with the goals? So there's a lot more you have to think of as you get to more powerful systems. When the agent goes out to call a tool, whether that's MCP or whatever, that's just a protocol for calling tools. If you don't know that, the most common one created by Anthropic and widely adopted. You have to also think, is that tool calling safe and appropriate, right? So you get to more and more security concerns. So we try to break it up into, and we'll be releasing this as a white paper, but we're trying to break this up into different levels of autonomy from a safety perspective, right? There's what you would consider pretty mundane, just executing tasks, right? That's a basic level. All agentic frameworks do that, I believe. Then are they actually creating their own tasks? Are they planning, right? That would be another level. So are they actually planning the tasks themselves, or are you providing that? And are you actually allowing that system to dynamically generate a plan, right? Is that plan evolving, right? Maybe it tries one way and then it fails and tries another way, right? So we looked at the different open source frameworks. There's a lot of similarities. They're all calling these things different things though. So one might call them agents, one might call them, well, agents is pretty universal for an agent framework, but they might call them flows or workflows. They might call things tasks. They might call things executors, right? So they have different terminology for the same thing. We tried to distill out of that and say, okay, most of these frameworks, you could have them operate at different levels. And by that, I mean, you could say, we're going to define a workflow. That's the workflow. go define the agents, and that's pretty buttoned down. You could also say, we're not going to define the agents, we're going to create them on the fly based on the workflow. That's another level, right? We're going to define the tasks, or they're going to define themselves, right? So we have these different levels. I won't jump into it because I don't want to scare you in because the white paper's coming out. But I did want to give you a fun example. So this is an example where part of this was published already, and you can look it up, or you can grab that. But there was, you go to an LLM and you say, how can you beat this chess computer for me? That's your goal. And the LLM will do some research. And in this case, they studied that one of the things that the LLM would realize often is that it wouldn't be able to beat a specialized chess computer. And so how would it work around that? And it decided, okay, I'm going to actually hack the chess program or the chess computer to resign, and therefore I'll win, right? So that's a creative way of saying I'm going to plan and start executing these tasks as an agentic framework, right? Where it's going off the rails. Hopefully we aren't wanting it to hack your system. We actually wanted it to win legally. You can go a step further though, and this is where we started to design this out, and you could coax this into a system where you could actually say that it would realize that it was hard, and then you'd say, no, you're not allowed to hack the system, that's impermeable. Then it started to look up different approaches. And so it said, okay, well, I want to actually go and compete with my own chess computer. And then it realizes that the chess computer is not free to use, the best one. And so then it went to try to find a credit card that it could use, right? So you have to be very careful about these agentic frameworks. They can be quite creative. And finally, we could even instill it to start to secretly plan and extract secret plans, right? So that's where it's not telling you what it's doing or its true intention of what it's doing. So this is how scary it gets. It's actually saying, I'm going to look at vulnerabilities here in this example, and I'm actually going to tell the user on the screen that I need to look up how to prevent hacking of electrical systems because I don't want to be hacked. I want this to be a fair fight. In reality, what it's doing is it's looking up how to hack electrical systems to bring down the grid of the chess computer, which hopefully that do successfully, right? So that's that type of thing that you have to start to watch out for with these agentic systems, right? These are intelligent and they might not have the right groundings. So when you look at traditional guardrails, they can help with some of that. They can detect some things, right? It can detect that you're going off the ground, but you do need new checks in this. And so that's the point of this white paper that's coming out. When we look at safety in agentic systems, you actually have to put those additional safety checks in. You have to actually align with the goal. You have to make sure that goal is aligned with the plan and that the plan's aligned with every step, that it makes sense, right? And you have to also look, are those steps actually legitimate or not, right? So there's additional work that needs to go into securing these. That's sort of the take-home message if you had one. The good news is that you can do it, right? And so we've deployed a few agentic systems now in production. Here's a good example where it's an agentic system, fairly robust workflow, calling different systems that are quite sensitive, and it's getting very good results. And of course, important that it's resilient and that it's safe, and knock on wood, it is. So anyway, that's it. Here's our white paper. That's the take-home message. Hopefully that was interesting. That's the first white paper. The second one will be coming up if you sign up. We'll send that to you as well. Okay. Hopefully that was of note. Thanks.
We have room for maybe a few questions. So if you have any, please shout now. So we can switch to the next speaker. Any questions about AI agentic schemes? I have a question. In terms of the study, was it actually like they had these agentic AI run that's what was encountered precisely, or was it just speculative?
Yeah. Yes. So with that study, you can actually, this was where you could coax it to say, prompt it to do different things. However, there have been examples in the wild of it coming up with scheming like that. So this was a little bit coaxed. Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. Thanks.
So are you saying that the agents are now able to create their own subgoals?
Yes. So most systems now allow for that, where they can create either sub plans or even create their own tasks and be able to generate their own sub goals as part of that.
Next question. So now, one of the realizations that we're also having is that goals not deterministic, which means that it can kind of like create its own plan, use its own tools, etc. How do you sort of like think about implementation to like actually reduce the non-deterministic nature of this coding practice, especially when in a typical world you do like CRs, you would actually like create reviews, etc. But you don't know where the boundary kind of lies. Are there any thoughts on like how do you sort of prevent that? The interesting thing was, go look at the plan, go look at the action. Easier said than done. But how do you sort of like build out those verification there that it just doesn't start drifting or like, starts learning a behavior that it's not supposed to, or you're not able to catch that?
Yeah, that's a great question. And there's two things. I would say only allow it to do that if you really need to, right? Or you want to, or part of that is some creativity part. Often in enterprises, the appropriate thing is to define create a well-defined workflow, right? It's just, that's a simpler way to go often with well-defined agents. And, so you can start to just limit the axes of creativity. But if you're not, how we're doing it, right, is we're installing this agentic supervisor, which at least is for every check, it is saying, okay, is that allowed or not? Is that allowed or not? So every step of that planning is going against that supervisor. It's like literally like a supervisor of an intern who might keep coming back to their boss and say, can I do this? Can I do that? Right. And then the boss might even at some point say no, or I'm taking over, or stop. You're fired, right? Hopefully not, but that's worst case scenario. Yeah.
Yeah. I like what you said about guardrails and keeping the AI in alignment with goals. But what's the mechanism that you're using, or you have to use PA, you have sort of a supervisor. So I'm guessing it's a supervisor that's keeping the AI on track. Is it the same mechanism, like an LLM or something, used to generate that supervisor? And once you do that supervisor, it kind of feels like just dominoes, right? So
Yeah.
the police is the police is the police is the police.
Yeah. It's a valid question, but I didn't get into our technology. We use a supervisor that has a series of fine-grained models, most of which are not LLMs themselves, and so they're not impervious to the same sort of security breaches. They're very well-defined, deterministic models. Yeah. Thanks. Oh, last one.
This is the last page only. Very, very interesting. Just out of curiosity, are you looking to
Yeah, we're working on the white paper. We will probably open source part of this at least. Yeah.
Great. Everyone, please, round of applause to